We have liftoff.
Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. We're just waiting for two of our councillors to connect. We'll just give them an extra 2 minutes.
Nigel is here.
Yes, I've arrived.
Nigel's here.
Yeah.
Okay, Nigel.
So you're waiting for one.
Morning, morning.
So we're just waiting for one councillor, and hopefully we will just give him 1 more minute, and then we can then start, and he will join us whenever he connects.
So it's a strange world, isn't it?
It certainly is. But let's hope it's getting better.
Hear, hear.
Apparently they're going to start doing the first of the COVID injections next week, according to the papers. So,
Yes.
Good.
We've been debating whether we turn up next time in our Christmas jumpers.
I haven't got a Christmas.
Well, nor have I. So I've got to do something with baubles.
On the original Scrooge, bar humbug, that's me.
Chairman, we are live on YouTube.
Okay, thank
Sorry.
you. Just if we can just bear with us. Okay, I think that we are ready to start, and Councillor Riley will join us as soon as he can. Okay, thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Broadland District Council Planning Committee on Wednesday, the 2nd of December 2020, our virtual meeting. Thank you to all our officers who enable these virtual planning meetings to progress. Hopefully everything will run smoothly, but please be patient. If we should find a few gremlins in the works, we will endeavour to resolve any problems as quickly as possible. Our meeting today will be recorded, and the meeting will be live streamed for public viewing on YouTube. The recording of this meeting will also be available on the Broadland District Council website. You should be aware any comments in this meeting will be recorded indefinitely. Please can I ask everyone in attendance to ensure that your microphones are unmuted, and that you should try to keep the background noise to a minimum. Background noise can be distracting from discussion and information being relayed throughout the meeting. My name is Councillor Sue Lawn, Chairman of the Planning Committee. I will now ask our committee officer to proceed to a roll call for other members of the Planning Committee. Thank you, Officer Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, if I may, do an alphabetical roll call, and if you could indicate if you have any declarations of interest at the same time. So that's Councillor Adams.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Beadle.
Present and no declarations of interest.
Councillor Brennan.
Present, no declarations.
We have apologies from Councillor Fisher. Councillor Folger.
Present, no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Karimi Guvenlu.
Present, no declarations of interest.
Councillor Lawn.
Present, and I have to declare that I'm a town councillor on Thorpe St Andrew Town Council, but I've had no discussion about this, the application that's coming before us today.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Leggett.
Present and no declarations.
Thank you. Councillor Moncur.
Present, no declarations.
Councillor Prutton.
Present and no declarations.
Councillor Riley has still not been able to join us, so at the moment we'll mark him as being absent. And Councillor Ward.
Yes, present. Declaration item 4 as a member of Thorpe St Andrew Town Council, but I was not present when that item was discussed at the council.
Thank you. That completes the attendance and declarations, Chairman, and apologies.
Thank you, Officer Matthews. Also present today with me are officers Helen Mellors, Assistant Director of Planning for Broadland and South Norfolk District Councils, Nigel Harris, East Area Team Manager for Broadland and South Norfolk District Councils, and one of our presenting officers today, Matthew Rook, Central Area Team Manager for Broadland and South Norfolk, and our second presenting officer today, Lee Arthurton from Democratic Services, who will be our host for today, and Don Matthews from Democratic Services, who will take and prepare the minutes of our meeting. Thank you. All members of the committee have received in advance paper copies of the agenda, presentation slides, and public written submission for the applications we will be considering today. At various points throughout the meeting, for example, in relation to questions and comments, I will do a roll call, member to member, in alphabetical order, requesting the members' input. Today, I'm pleased to confirm that we have public speaking for this planning meeting. Only members of the public who have registered to speak in accordance with the council scheme of public speaking will be able to address this committee. The time allocation is a maximum of 5 minutes per speaker per parish council. Please be aware there is no provision for members of the public to circulate documents or photographs at this meeting. The order of our meeting today will be as follows. The planning officer will present the key points for the applications to the committee for their consideration. This will be followed by questions to the presenting officer from members of the committee in relation to the presentation. Public speakers will then be invited to address the committee. This will be followed by questions to the public speakers from members of the committee. I must emphasize these questions will only be to clarify something the speaker has said and not for the speaker to put further points across. The order of public speaking is parish town council first, followed by objectors and finally supporters, i.e. the applicant or the agent. Council members who are not members of this committee will then be invited to speak for the allocated time of a maximum of 5 minutes for each speaker. This again will be followed by questions from members of the committee. The committee will then discuss and determine the application with a proposer and seconder for each of the applications we will consider. Members will give their vote to the proposal by roll call, and our committee officer will relay the result of their votes to the meeting. Do we have any questions before we proceed?
Chairman, if I may just backtrack slightly, I notice that Councillor Riley has now joined us. Can I just check, Councillor, thank you very much, you are in attendance. And do you have any declarations, Councillor Riley?
Sorry,
you're on
Councillor
mute.
Riley, you're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, no declarations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning.
Sorry, Chairman.
That's okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we have no further questions, so we will now move on to our agenda. And at this point of our virtual meeting, I would like to bring forward items 3 and 4 together. We've already done agenda item number 1 with the declarations of interest, and we will now move to 3 and 4 to confirm the minutes of the previous meeting, and then we will also ask if there's any matters arising therefrom. So, Officer Matthews.
Thank you, Chairman. So if you could indicate if you're happy to approve the minutes as a correct record and raise any matters arising as I call your name out.
And so can I just confirm, is minutes from the meeting held on the 4th of November 2020?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Adams.
Approve the minutes, no matters arising.
Thank you. Councillor Beadle.
Approve the minutes, and just on item 137, the application for the paintballing enterprise at the Drayton Drury. Can I say that I did actually pass the existing car park on the roundabout on the end of, or near the end of the NDR on the Reefham Road a week last Sunday, and there were 56 cars on that car park. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Beadle. Councillor Brennan.
Yeah, approve the minutes and no matters arising.
Councillor Folger.
Approve the minutes and no matters arising.
Councillor Creamy Gouvernloo.
Minutes approved and no matters arising.
Councillor Lawn.
Agree the minutes and no matters arising.
Councillor Leggett. You're on mute, Councillor Leggett.
Oh, sorry. Apologies. I wasn't at that meeting.
So, Councillor Leggett, can I confirm that you're happy with the minutes and you have no matters arising?
That is correct, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Moncur.
Approve the minutes and no matters arising.
Thank you. Councillor Prutton.
Approve the minutes, no matters arising. Thank you.
Councillor Riley.
Approve the minutes and no matters arising. Thank you.
Councillor Ward.
Approve the minutes, no matters arising.
That concludes items 3 and 4 on the agenda, Chairman.
Wonderful, thank you very much. And Officer Matthews, we've already dealt with agenda item number 2, apologies, and that was Councillor Fisher has given his apologies, and Councillor Ken Leggett is in his substitute. Okay, thank you. We will now move to agenda item number 5, schedule of applications. And if I can just confirm to the members, we will have our first presentation this morning, and we will be considering our first 2 applications on the agenda under one presentation, sorry. And Officer Harris will explain the reasoning for the one presentation as we move along. So the application numbers is application 1, 2020 1173, and application number 2, 2020 1200, Old Hall site, Little Plumstead Hospital, Little Plumstead. Leah, can you just please confirm that we have our public speaker in attendance this morning, Mr. Mark Noland?
Yes, I can confirm, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. And Officer Harris, it's over to you. Officer Harris, are you there? Officer Harris, are you on mute?
Sorry, you're on mute, Nigel.
Stop screen sharing. Right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, sorry about that. I had a phone call coming through, which I've got rid of. So hopefully now
yes,
we are screen sharing. Yes,
yes,
good.
we are. Thank you very much.
Okay, so items 1 and 2. I just, by way of update, I just want to draw members' attention to the supplementary schedule, page 89. One is to draw reference to an item of history where unfortunately the application number was missing, but that was clarified in the supplementary schedule, the 2008 reference number. And also there was an outstanding matter in relation to a waste management plan and bin storage and collection, etc., in relation to the affordable housing units, plots 5 to 8. We now have a revised scheme which the contracts manager has confirmed represents a good waste management plan, and that's now dealt with that issue. The reason we're taking the 2 applications together is they're very inextricably linked in relation to their site relationship. And also the past history to the site in terms of how both sides of Old Hall Road were going to be utilised in terms of an earlier permission. So if I can go to our first slide, just to put the site in context, that's the site location. Little Plumstead Hospital sits to the north of the A47 and to the south of Norwich Road. Salhouse, Plumstead, Little Plumstead to the north. You've then got the urban fringe on the west side here and the Broadland Northway. Next slide. The 2 application sites, they sit centrally within what was the historic former Little Plumstead Hospital. Pretty much all of this site that you're seeing on the slide here was NHS, former Little Plumstead Hospital and nurses accommodation. But since about 1999, the Secretary of State for Health has declared parts of the site surplus to NHS requirements, to the extent that the only operating part of the hospital has been drawn back to an area which I'm just outlining here. That's the main area, retained area of Little Plumstead Hospital, including some service buildings that are referred to within one of the application sites. And the access to that site comes in off Hospital Road and then leads through a slightly adjusted means of access and then into the site and then back out again. The remainder of the site has been redeveloped for approximately 400 residential units, including a relocated primary school. The primary school was a small Victorian building in this top right-hand corner of the building you see here. But certainly redevelopment of this site was seen as an opportunity to create a new primary school. There's a 210 place primary school here currently, and it does have planning permission to extend to a 420 place primary school, elements of which have been contributed to by developments on this site, which have enlarged the playing field and given land for extension of car park, etc. So the 2 sites we're looking at, this is Old Hall Road. It connects, as I say, from Hospital Road into the area of redevelopment here, which the developer, the current applicant, has been completing. There's approximately 108 residential units which they've constructed here. And Old Hall Road then connects back to the earlier phase of redevelopment, where we had 225 dwellings originally, and then a further 75 dwellings, which was in excess of building footprint on this site, that delivered an estate road and also the original replacement school site. Next slide is the extract from the site allocations DPD to demonstrate the existing settlement limit. This only really picks up on the more historic development in relation to the site. So we've got the area here where 225 units were constructed. We've got the area within settlement limit here where an additional 75 were built. The northern application site, 2020-1200, is within the settlement limit. The side of the former Old Hall, which is adjacent to the settlement limit but outside, sits to the south here. You've then got another 108 dwellings that sit in this location here, which are outside of the settlement limit. Next slide. In terms of the planning history, the key one here was the 2013 permission, which was the second phase of the hospital that was declared surplus to requirements by Secretary of State for Health. And they secured outline planning permission for residential development, conversion of the hall, which you can see sat here, and then car parking in relation to the hall conversion for about 17 apartments for market housing. I've got a larger scale plan of that. And it also illustrates the additional development that's now taken place under reserve matters and full planning, together with a new access that was put into Water Lane that delivered an objective from the Plumstead neighbourhood plan, so that all development was not going out in terms of its access onto Hospital Lane. So a new access that serves all of these properties that I'm just outlining here, goes straight out, back out onto Water Lane, but there is pedestrian and cycle connectivity back to the remainder of the state, as there is public access of all of the woodland that borders the application site, including the open space that sits to the south of the lake and to the north of the lake, where we have additional play areas which are referred to in your report. Larger scale extract of that master plan. So this was the hall that was to be converted. It was a two-story building, and we'll come on to pictures of that. It was then to have car parking on the north side. On the north side is where a two-story administration block, flat-roofed admin block, used to exist in the NHS days when this was a functioning hospital, and then additional parking to the side, and I think what was going to be some private space, and then open space to the south of the former hall, and that's the area subject to the two current applications. So we'll move on to the first one, which is for the 11 dwellings on the south side of Old Hall Road. That's the application site. You saw on those slides the route that comes in. Old Hall Road comes in off Hospital Road and then serves the existing residential development. The hospital access comes through and to the side, into the south here. That's actually been rerouted. The original hospital access was this little spur off here, and it was seen more practical for that hospital to come off to a new estate road. So this area here of former access road to the hospital has been landscaped and now forms part of open space as part of the wider site. That access road then leads across to the primary school and also to the former walled garden, which is a successful community project as part of development on this site. Development has delivered a serviced access road to that walled garden, and that walled garden has now been taken on by the parish council. They've repaired it, and a community trust now operate a cafe and community shop from that site that's very much come into its own in recent times. So this is where the old hall stood. Following the fire, it had to be demolished because it was unsafe for health and safety reasons. So this is the area, the brownfield area of the former old hall, currently used as a site compound in relation to the completion of the adjoining housing development. There are some hospital service buildings here that provide electricity still to the retained hospital. They are referred to in the report. They have to be retained currently until they can be relocated, but the developer is proposing to, as part of this application, to make them good, tidy them up and landscape them. And that's then the area to the north. Next slide. This is the footprint, looking at the center of the slide here, this is the footprint of the former hall that was to be converted and the old canteen building that stood there. And that very much follows now the footprint of the proposed development. So they're the elevations of the old hall. This bottom right-hand slide here, that's the frontage elevation that it presented to Old Hall Road. So a two-story building with a long built form, as you see here, presenting itself to Old Hall Road. This was the picture, the rear elevation to the south overlooking the open space. So the application, when it originally came in, was for 15 dwellings. It proposed a terrace of units along the frontage, 2 linked units returning on the left-hand side, presenting themselves in single-story form to the west, and then a new access road, a private drive serving the service buildings here, the retained service buildings, and also these units, 7 units at the time, which would be to be for affordable housing. That has been revised in terms of providing a layout that's more akin to the former building that stood there, and also so that we have less incursion into the open space. So we've now got 7 open market units. We've still got this crescent, 2-story crescent along the frontage. Only a single unit that returns itself on the left-hand side, and 4 affordable housing units still served by the private access drive. The bin storage and collection points have all been incorporated now, which the contracts manager has no objections to, which I refer to. It's policy compliant delivery of affordable housing. We move on to street elevations. This is looking at the north, the road elevation from Old Hall Road. So although it's a flat elevation, this is a slight crescent, presents itself with central gable and sort of bookend gables at either end. That's then that single story wing on the right-hand side as you're looking at it. So that's to the west, that returns and faces the existing 2-story development that the developer has built out recently. And then the affordable units, which are all bungalow types, which have been carefully negotiated along with the council's housing enabling manager. That's the rear elevation. There's a ha-ha or a split level of open space to the rear of the site, which the boundary wall and railings above will follow, giving that nice open aspect and view out to the south. That's that single-story wing, and then the 4 affordable bungalows to the right-hand side. You see those, that's the western elevation. You've got 2 1-bed units, a 2-bed unit, and a 3-bed unit. So closer elevations, this is the single-story open market unit to the right-hand side that turns the corner. Nice design that links in then with the various house types. You've got 3 different house types, a mix of 3-bed and 4-bed units that form together that terraced crescent, presenting itself along the frontage where the old hall once stood. So just go through those elevations. What you're seeing here is that individual slice through the dwelling type, but obviously these are then linked to form that 7-unit terrace. Then we move on to the open, to the affordable housing units. So these, you've got 2 1-bed units, as I say, a 1 2-bed unit, and then the 3-bed unit at the end. That was negotiated up from a 2-bed unit to meet specific need identified by the housing enabling manager, and the developer has incorporated that change within the proposal. So views of the site, this is from the the southwest corner. The hall stood roughly in this area that I'm marking out here. There's a 3-metre footway cycleway that forms the southern edge of Old Hall Road. And this is the turn off to the right that leads to the retained NHS hospital facility, the primary school, the walled garden, community shop cafe and residential development. And then the road continues round along the frontage of the site, then linking up with the other 200 or so residential units. So it gives good site access and connectivity within the site. Preserved trees which are being retained. This is on the western corner of the application site. So you see footpath crossings from that footway cycleway. This is where the road bends round and then leads into the residential development and to the retained hospital facility. This is where the former access to the hospital once was. That's all now been stopped up and forms a footway cycleway within the development and a better space in relation to those trees. A view from the southeast, so we're now the other side of the site. The application site is on this side now. These are the service buildings which you can see, which are in need of some attention and will be made good by the applicant and landscaped. There is a landscaping scheme that's been submitted as part of the proposal that sees a lot of replacement trees and landscaping, including landscaping of the surface water attenuation basin that exists on site and serves the existing development and will serve this development also. That is that attenuation basin within a wider area of open space. So the site itself sits in this area here and in this area here. So this is the area of the former Old Hall. You can see existing residential development beyond. And then the area here, which is proposed for the affordable housing units. There is a footway that separates the site from existing residential development that then sits the other side of that. And you can just make out the roofs, etc., of that existing development. So we're now the opposite end of the site, again on that open space. We're looking at it from the southeast. You've got all preserved trees on this site. There's a bank of preserved trees that form the southern edge of this area of open space. There's then another area of open space beyond. The attenuation basin in this area here and the site along this area and to the side. Then move on to the application which is linked to the north side of Old Hall Road, which is for the 4 properties, 2 bungalows and 2 houses. So the site you were looking at was on this area here and here. So we're now flipped over onto the other side of the Old Hall Road. So that's that detailed area here. It does include, there's a large chestnut tree here, which again is a preserved tree. And just to relate it to existing development, this is Kevel Davis Drive. There is a children's play area enclosed with bow-top fencing here, and then a wider area, wider buffer of grassed open space around that play area. You've got 2-story properties here, here, and here. Gable ended at this point. And then the layout, this was the layout that came in originally, which was for 6 sort of linked bungalows along that site frontage. There were concerns about the amount of development and the number of access points, particularly this location here at a junction close to the turning points to the school and the hospital and the wider residential development. That layout was subsequently changed and reduced in unit numbers to 2 bungalows at either end and included a footway, a new footway along the site frontage with the pram crossing at this point here to tie in with an existing footway on the west side that leads in from Hospital Road and also leads up to a bus stop at the top end of Hospital Road. And then 2 houses here, located here so that their rear elevations overlook the play area and are not compromising the amenity of the neighbouring houses to the east and to the west. Both of those, or all of those properties served by paired access drives, 3 parking spaces for each, which includes a parking space within the garages, which are oversized, so they do count as parking spaces for our standards. Dwelling types, these are the bungalows, so these sort of bookend, they sit either side of the 2 houses, so provide a transition in terms of that built form. And then the 2 houses that sit centrally and address then the 2-storey terrace development proposed on the opposite side. So we're getting back that street frontage that formerly used to exist along this part of Old Hall Road. They're the garage types that are paired between the bungalows and the houses. So we're now looking at the site. The site's on the right-hand side. I refer to those properties on Kebble Davis Drive. You can see that western terrace of units. This is Hospital, the access from Hospital Road, Old Hall Road coming in here, and then the turn off to the left as you're looking here that goes to the school, the shop, and the residential development. There is a car park here, which was conveyed to the District Council along with play areas on the site. Members, longer standing members will be familiar that parts of this site, the developer went into administration, and we've finally achieved delivery of the open play areas and church car park, including a commuted sum for maintenance. This is the further part of that north site. So you've got boundary fencing, existing close board, 1.8 metre high boundary fencing, the play area behind, and the other properties on Kebble Davis Drive, the TPO chestnut tree, which I refer to, and a new footway will be provided along this side where one doesn't exist at present, that will connect from east to west. We're at that eastern end now, looking back across the site where you'll see that strong frontage that will then present itself back to the old hall, or to the redevelopment of the old hall. And this is looking further east again, just to put that side in relation to the site of those terraced units that you will see on the south side. And I will leave members on that slide that just shows the layout in totality. So that's that crescent of terraced, 2-storey terraced units in the area of the former old hall, that return single-storey wing here, the 4 affordable housing units here served by their own private drive, which will be built to adoptable standard, their own in-curtilage parking spaces, and the 4 dwellings proposed on the opposite side, all connected in terms of affordable housing provision and contributions to recreation and leisure and formal open space and green infrastructure. And very much it creates further connectivity with the site, because we complete that footway link from east to west on the northern part of the site. We also get new pathways within the existing open space that provides greater connectivity and more opportunities for people to walk within the existing public open space on site. So you've got 2 planning applications here, both on land that was to have delivered the conversion of the former old hall into about 17 open market apartments as part of the earlier permission. The reports before you deal with the background to both sites, as well as the planning considerations and the planning balance. There are considered to be significant material benefits to the proposals, including the delivery of both affordable and market housing, economic benefits associated with construction and new dwellings, as well as financial contributions to formal and informal open space. The proposal, as you saw from the pictures, also reintroduces a street frontage and completes the redevelopment of the remaining part of the former hospital site. The only outstanding matter relates to that of surface water drainage strategies for both sites. It is proposed that the 4 dwellings to the north will be drained via soakaways, which is so we're at the top end of the SUDS hierarchy, that they will be drained via soakaways within their own curtilages. The soil or context is slightly different on the south side, and these dwellings are proposed to be drained into that attenuation basin that then provides a controlled release of water into the lake that you saw to the southeast of the site, and then into the Witten Run. So again, a form of SUDS hierarchy in terms of how surface water is controlled. There is some further clarification required in relation to the drainage strategy, particularly in terms of matters of infiltration calculations, details of finished ground floor levels of units above proposed ground level and maintenance and management regimes. Those details, I've had a revised strategy submitted today, which will be going back to the LLFA for comment. It's not a fundamental objection. Those points can be dealt with, and hence the recommendation before you is that on both applications that we seek delegated authority to approve to the Director of Place to approve both applications subject to satisfactory resolution of the surface water drainage matters, the completion of an overarching Section 106 legal agreement that will deal with the provision of the affordable housing, and also the payment of the commuted sums in relation to formal and informal open space and recreation, and where that money is going to be spent. So you've got two separate recommendations before you, one on page 32 of the agenda and the other on page 50 and 51 of the agenda. Both very much read the same in terms of the seeking delegated authority to approve, subject to the 106, subject to resolving the outstanding matters with the LLFA, and then subject to the conditions as listed under those two recommendations. And that concludes presentations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Officer Harris. Okay, if I can just ask, if we go back to full screen, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, and if I can just ask members, do you have any questions in relation to the presentation? No. Okay, thank you very much. If I can just, I should have explained before we started the presentation that even though the presentation has been as one, we will be voting on the two applications individually. So, so just to take that forward. And I also need to, before we move on to the public speaking, I need just to advise the members of the public that all of the committee members have received the paperwork, have received the presentations as hard copies, so they will all be aware of the paperwork that you've seen, and that's what we'll be seeing as well. So committee members, I just need to, I should have asked you as well, please don't leave your screen at any time during the public speaking or discussion of this application. If you should need to leave for any reason, please give the reason for leaving to the host through chat, and you will need to understand that you could be unable to vote for the application under discussion if you are absent for any length of time. Please be advised, if a member should lose connection for a period of time, the meeting will be adjourned until the member reconnects. Please note, a member will be given 5 minutes to reconnect before the meeting will resume, and if the member has not reconnected in that timescale, he or she will not have a vote on the application under consideration at the time of losing connection. And after we've had public speaking and the discussion, we will then move on to the vote. And we will now move to the public speaking. And
sorry, could I just interject there? Can I just, on the basis of what you just said, Chairman, can I just check that Councillor Riley was in attendance for all of that presentation? Because I noticed your camera was off for a while. I just want to make sure you were still with us and hadn't lost your connection. Good, thank you very much. Just wanted to check that.
Okay,
Sorry,
that's lovely,
Chairman.
thank you. That's absolutely fine. So, ladies and gentlemen, at this point in time, we will move to our public speaking. This morning, we don't have any representation from the Parish Council, nor do we have any members of the public speaking to object against this application. However, we do have a public speaker in favour of the application, Mr. Mark Noland. And Mr. Noland, thank you for attending this morning. Officer Atherton, could you please unmute Mr. Noland? And once Mr. Nolan's got unmuted, thank you. Thank you for attending this morning. If I can just advise you, Mr. Nolan, that you have 5 minutes to address the committee. Unfortunately, as yet, we still don't have a clock that we can share on our screen, as that would block you from the members of the committee. However, the host of our meeting will advise you when you have 1 minute remaining. Is that acceptable to you?
Yes, it is, Chairman. Thank you.
That's lovely. Mr. Nolan, please introduce yourself to the committee and you will have 5 minutes. from now. And so I just need to advise the committee that you will be speaking on both the applications. So your time will be for both the applications.
That's right. Thank you very much,
Thank
Chairman. Chairman, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mark Nolan from Architects Chapel and Farrant, with the architects involved in well, this scheme and the previous scheme, so know the site well, and would like to speak in support of this application. As you've heard from your officers, the two applications are linked, and these application replaces the approval to convert the old hall into 17 flats. The old hall was unfortunately destroyed in an arson attack in 2016. Our application seeks to build 4 new homes to the north of the estate road and a further 11 on the site of the old hall. The proposal will be for a mix of 7 bungalows and 8 family homes, 4 of which will be affordable bungalows ranging from 1 bedrooms, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom units. If these applications are approved, this will be the final piece of the jigsaw to complete the residential development at Little Plumstead. Behind the crescent of houses, we're proposing enlarging and landscaping the existing attenuation lagoon to accommodate the additional hard surfacing. The lagoon will be surrounded by 12 new trees and designed to accommodate all the surface water for the 1 in 100 year storm event plus climate change. After a downpour, the water will drain away, leaving only parts of it to remain wet. These areas will be planted with bulrushes and other water-tolerant plants to improve the ecology of the site. Concern was raised that the development would lead to on-street parking. All properties have sufficient on-site curtilage parking, and the fact that these spaces are accessed off the road deters drivers from parking in front of the residential drives. Care has been taken to ensure pedestrian and drivers' visibility is not obscured by buildings or landscaping. We've worked with your officers, designed a sympathetic scheme to complete the development, providing much needed open market and new affordable homes. During these trying times, this development will employ 60 to 70 people during the construction of these new homes and provide a civil contribution of around £140,000, of which 25% will go back to the parish councils. I hope members will be able to follow the recommendation of their officers and approve this scheme. Thank you.
Apologies, I keep muting myself and forgetting, so apologies. Okay, members, do you have any questions for Mr. Noland in relation to the applications? No? Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much, Mr. Nolan, for your time. Members, we will now move on to open discussion in relation to the application in front of us. Can I just ask if all the members are muted, please, Leah?
Sorry.
And,
Yep.
Okay, and you will remain on mute as a committee. Please can I ask if you would like to comment or ask a question to the officers, please register your request to do so in the chat or raise your hand and I will come to you in turn. After this discussion, the committee will then determine the decision of the application on proposal and seconding of the application. If necessary during the discussion, Officer Mellors and Officer Harris will be able to respond to your questions accordingly. Members, after appropriate discussion, I will roll call to confirm your agreement and there will be no further comments before we should move on to the vote. Okay, and do we have anyone who would like to open the discussion? Okay, Councillor Adams.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm quite happy to move the officer's recommendation on this one. We've had a very good presentation, very good little speech from Mark. And I have no doubt whatsoever this will be a very good sort of development, and quite happy to move the officer's recommendation, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Adams.
Second that, Chairman.
Councillor Ward, thank you. And Councillor Karimi, do you have any questions?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just concerned about plots 5 to 8. It says it's they're going to have communal bins. Is that's a bit of a concern with antisocial behaviour, I would have thought. Was there any reason why they're not having individual bins?
If I can just clarify on that, the scheme specifically for these plots, the 4 units are going to have what they are termed bin lockers, where they have secure storage, so they're not open to anyone else. They have bin lockers that they will be able to put their refuse in, and then on the day of collection, they will then just take those bins out and move them to the collection point that's adjacent to the curbside. And that's a scheme which has been discussed very much between the developer and our contracts manager in terms of the refuse plan for this particular part of the site. And as you see in the supplementary, she's very much happy with that.
I don't have a
So it
supplementary.
does. Sorry?
I don't have a supplementary for some reason.
Apologies for that, but yes, that revised scheme is supported by our contracts officer, who's commented that it represents a very good waste management plan. It is secure, it does avoid the issue of antisocial behaviour, and it's something that there is agreement on between our contractors and our contract manager. So it does provide a safe and secure means for refuse collection and storage up until the day of collection.
Okay, thank you, Nigel. Let's confirm that. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Moncur, did you have something that you wanted to?
I was just going to second it, Sue.
Okay, thank you. And any further members' questions before we would go to the vote?
Oh, Councillor Beadle's got his hand raised.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Beadle.
It's quite all right. Just to confirm that the proposal is for both reports. Is it?
No, the presentation was for both the applications, but when we go to this vote, it will be for the first application. And once we've agreed that one, we will then go to the second one. We just have to do that for the record. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So if we can then, if there's no further discussion and there's no further questions, we will move on to the vote for this application. And the application is 2020-73. And it's been proposed by Councillor Adams and seconded by Councillor Ward that we should as a committee agree to the officer's recommendation to delegate authority to the Director of Place to approve this application subject to satisfactory resolution of water drainage, completion of section 106. And the agreements and the subject to the conditions as stated on page 32 of your papers. Officer Matthews, if you could please do the roll call.
Thank you, Chairman. So members, if you could indicate if you are for or against the proposal. Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Beadle.
For.
Councillor Brennan.
For.
Councillor Folger.
For.
Councillor Karimi Guvenlu.
For.
Councillor Lawn.
For.
Councillor Leggett.
For.
Councillor Moncur.
For.
Councillor Pretton.
For.
Councillor Riley.
For.
And Councillor Ward.
For.
Chairman, that's unanimously carried.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much. And we will now move on to our second application, and it's 2020-1200. And again, if we would like to have any discussion, or do I have a proposer and seconder for
I'll propose again, Madam Chairman.
Okay,
Second.
thank you. And Councillor Ward.
Yeah.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you. So, members, it has been proposed by Councillor Adams and seconded by Councillor Ward that we should, as a committee, agree to the officer's recommendation to delegate authority to the Director of Place to approve this application, subject to satisfactory resolution of surface water drainage and completion of Section 106 agreement, and subject to the conditions stated on page 50 of your papers. Officer Matthews, please, if you could.
Thank you, Chairman. So again, members, if you could indicate if you are for or against. Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Beadle.
For.
Councillor Brennan.
For.
Councillor Folger.
For.
Councillor Karimi Guvenlu.
For.
Councillor Lawn.
For.
Councillor Leggett.
For.
Councillor Moncur.
For.
Councillor Pretton.
For.
Councillor Riley.
For.
And Councillor Ward.
For.
Again, that's unanimous, Chairman.
Well, thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for your time on that application this morning. And we will now move on to our third application of the morning. And it's 2020-00699 Hainford. And could I just confirm, Officer Atherton, please, that we have Mr. Dosser and Mr. Shooter. And we also have Councillor Naseem with us as well.
Yes, I can confirm they're all in.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you. And it will be Officer who will be doing our presentation. Thank you very much, and I will pass it over to Officer Rook. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to do my screen share. Can everybody see that?
Yes, that's lovely. Thank you.
Okay. So item 3 on your agenda today is the application at the address land to the rear of the cottage, Grange Road, Hainford. This is a reserved matters application for the erection of a single 4-bedroom, 1.5-storey residential dwelling following the earlier outline approval. Just trying to get the, let me just. Move that through, do it this way. So this is the application site identified in red here. So this is Grange Road, running through the slide here. The application site identified in red, which is located behind 2 existing frontage cottages. One being Pondview Cottage, the other is known as The Cottage. You can see the land in blue here, indicating that this land is owned by the applicant, as is the application site, as is an area of land to the rear of the application site. The other thing just to draw your attention to is a private drive, which is proposed to serve the application site, and that achieves access at Grange Road. At this point, that then continues to 2 further properties to the north, Pinewood Farm and Pinewood House. And then to the west of the application site, we've got another small little development known as the Old Coach House Gardens, which is here, and that achieves access via a drive running in that position. You can see amongst existing residential properties in the surrounding area, the remaining parts of Hainford are of this direction to Dumbs Lane and further to the southwest of the site. Just gives the aerial context of the site, so you can see the sort of the extent of the built-up area, the residential development. The other thing just to mention is that the settlement limit for this part of Hainford includes the Old Coach House Gardens, comes down Old Coach House Gardens, includes this application site, and then runs in this direction to include those properties. So the land this side of the settlement is outside the settlement limit, but the application site itself is within the settlement limit. This, as it says, is a block plan originally submitted. So when the application was originally submitted, the orientation of the dwelling was running sort of north-south. Concerns were expressed about the proximity of this gable to the rear of the neighbouring properties, and also just the proximity of the rear garden to there's a line of Scots pines that run along this boundary here. So it was seen that probably wasn't the appropriate orientation, and the dwelling has subsequently been switched around. That shows it in that form, sorry. So this is the current form of the application site, so that it's now set running an east-west orientation, which allows an area of car parking to the front of the property with the access in this position here, area of garden to the rear, and space to the sides, so both the east towards the neighbouring property to the east, and to the west to the Old Coach House Gardens development. Just taking that in a little bit closer, you can see the arrangement of the site itself, with the access coming in here, an area of forecourt to the front. There's a cart shed, garage area, which is in here for 2 cars. So it allows cars to park, turn and maneuver out onto the private drive in a forward gear. Also shows the separation distances to the western boundary. This boundary is angled so that it's wider at the front, about 4 meters to the front, 3 meters to the rear, and 2 meters separation on this eastern boundary. The other thing to note on here, because of the relationship to the neighbouring properties to the south, it's proposed that this roof plane here will be provided with roof lights, and the rear elevation, which looks across the rear garden, is provided with dormer windows. You'll see those in a moment on the elevation, but it just shows that relationship and the distance 8 meters separation between the front of the property and the dividing boundary to the cottages, approximately 7.5 meter rear garden off of these projecting sort of extended elements to the rear. Mentioned about the trees on the western boundary. This is the line of Scots pine, which is just beyond the application site and sits to the side of the driveway, serving the properties and the old coach house gardens. What this plan shows, this is an extract from the arboricultural implications assessment submitted with the application. So it identifies the position of each of those trees. The pink line is the canopy of the trees. The blue line is the root protection area of each of those trees. And this hatching shows the area of sort of what we call construction exclusion. So that area is going to be protected during the construction of the dwelling to ensure that the construction doesn't extend into the tree root area. You can see here the blue line primarily outside of the footprint of the dwelling. One tree here where it does extend, and the arboricultural method statement that's been submitted with this application draws recommendations in relation to a assessment of the roots in that area to understand if there's any larger tree roots. If there are, then appropriate foundation construction would be required in relation to those, in relation to that side of the property. Once again, on the other side of the property, beyond the driveway, this is the driveway that comes down that side of the property, there are 2 oak trees within the garden of the neighbouring property. And once again, you can see the canopy in pink and the root protection area in blue. Those canopy, the construction exclusion zone, once again, on that side of the property. The main construction of the dwelling is outside of that. There is a small element, an extended element on the side there. And once again, the arboricultural method statement talks about surveying the tree roots in that location to see if there's any significant tree roots that would have to be dealt with. And if they are required to be dealt with, then a specialist foundation would be required on that side of the building too. Floor plan. So this is the ground floor of the property. Front door here. I mentioned the double bay sort of cart shed at the rear. And then these sort of almost have the form of extensions coming out the back, but it's all part of the property itself. So that's the ground floor. First floor. This is where the roof lights are in relation to the neighbouring properties. Ensuite, served by a roof light in that position, a roof light over the top of the stairs, roof light over that bathroom, roof light over that ensuite, a roof light over that bedroom. So it's only that one really that would be habitable. The rest of them would be to either bathrooms or ensuites or over the top of the stair or the base of the stairs. Then the rear aspect has these dormer windows. The other thing to note, there is windows on the side here, but these are intended to be as fire escape windows. And on the side elevation, there's an indication that these would be fitted with a louver to ensure there's no overlooking in that direction. And officers have recommended a condition to require details of that treatment, just to ensure that it doesn't result in any adverse overlooking. Going through the elevations, this is the front view of the property. So it's designed as a 1.5 story property with the bedrooms and en-suites up in the roof space. It's got almost a feel of a kind of a barn with the main footprint of the dwelling here, and then these more sort of subservient elements to the side, which are clad in timber, and the open cart shed on the western side of the property. That's the rear aspect with the dormer windows. The side, that's the side towards the private drive, and that's the side elevation towards the old coach house gardens. And that's where I mentioned about those escape windows. It says on there, concealed panel, feature louver panel for fire escape window. We don't have a detail of that at the moment, so we've suggesting a condition just to have a detail of that treatment, just to ensure that that louver is angled in such a way that it doesn't allow any kind of views out of those windows towards the neighbouring properties. Now to some photographs of the site. So this is the access from the private drive onto Grange Road. That's the view to the south, across the front of Pondview Cottage, and in the opposite direction across the property known as the Ark. Views from the drive or from Grange Road looking back towards the drive. So it's a hardened surface, hedged either side at the moment. And you can just see it continues its line through. Taking you up that drive, you can then see the entrance into the site. This is the access point into the site. And then the drive continues further to the north to the other two properties I mentioned. This is probably the best view that shows the context of the Scots Pines on the western boundary of the site and one of the neighbouring properties at the Old Coach House Gardens. Views within the site looking back towards the frontage cottages. So that's Pondview Cottage. And that's the cottage, the applicant's property there. You can see this boundary treatment and the existing vegetation that exists on that boundary. Views from within the site. Currently there's a few structures within the site. Obviously those would be removed to facilitate the construction of the dwelling. But once again, you can see the treatment of the Scots Pines to the boundary and a Lalandi hedge, which is within the applicant's ownership, just on that boundary itself. Views within the site itself. The actual extent of the application site is just beyond this little wooden structure, so estimated about this line here. These elements are again within the applicant's ownership. So that's an area that he's using to stand a few cars and things like that on at the moment. That's the boundary to the private drive and the two oak trees that I mentioned when we looked at the tree details. And then just some general views from within the site. And the final one, just looking back at that layout of the proposals. Just to the summary of the report. As I've said, this is a reserved matters application. Matters for consideration are the layout, scale and appearance of the dwelling, including proposed materials, also the access, parking and landscaping of the site. As I've said, outline approval was granted, and that was granted by Planning Committee in March 2018. The application is brought before committee for determination at the request of Councillor Neeson for the reasons given at paragraph 4.6 of your report. The application site is located within the settlement limit that's been defined for Hainford, with existing two-storey residential development around it, and together with the outline approval, the principle of development of this site has been established. Draw members' attention to the supplementary schedule, page 89, where the Parish Council have raised some additional comments. For those people that haven't seen the supplementary schedule, that was a concern that the site was remote from the local school with no footpaths to the school, and also that the proposals was showing fossil fuel as heating. The officer has responded, the case officer has responded to that to say the site is within the settlement limit and has been granted outline approval. So that's something to consider against the proximity of the school, and also in relation to the heating is not something that officers or the application is seeking approval for. That'd be something that the building regulations would have to consider and not considered to be a matter for determination under this particular application. Issues for consideration are whether the position and design of the dwelling is appropriate with regard to the character and appearance of the area, the nearby trees, neighbouring residential amenities, and whether the proposed access and parking arrangements are acceptable. The dwelling has been designed so it has the appearance of a 1.5-storey barn with additions to the sides and rear, to be built from red facing bricks with featured timber cladding and Norfolk red pantiles. To be sited to the rear of a pair of 2-storey cottages that front Grange Road with access from the private drive. It is considered the dwelling would not be visible within the street scene. The size of the dwelling in relation to the plot has been raised as a reason for objection by neighbours and the parish council, and the revised plan has reduced the footprint of the dwelling, and it now has a rear garden depth of 7.5 metres, a front forecourt which is 8 metres deep, and separation to the side boundaries of 3 metres and 2 metres respectively. It is considered that these dimensions provide adequate space around the dwelling without it being a cramped form of development. The scale, design and form of the dwelling is also considered to be appropriate for the area, given that there is no single dominant style of house size or house form within the locality, and it's considered that the appearance would be acceptable within the street scene. In terms of residential amenities, the house has been designed so that its first floor rooms are served with roof lights towards neighbouring properties at Pondview Cottage and the cottage, with dormer windows to the rear, overlooking the property's own rear garden, and on the side elevations at first floor, so overlooking of neighbours to the side will not be an issue. It is considered that it's noted, that there are trees on the western boundary of the application site and to the east of the site beyond the private drive. These trees are not subject to a tree preservation order and the site is not in a conservation area. However, the Scots pines and the oak trees are in third-party ownership. A tree survey has been submitted together with a tree protection plan and a arboricultural method statement, which details how the trees will be protected during the course of construction of the dwelling. Your council's arboricultural officer has considered these proposals and has no objections, subject to conditions that work take place in accordance with the TPP and the detailed arboricultural method statement, which, as I said, recommends hand digging if substantial roots are found, and if deemed necessary, a specially designed foundation would be required for those parts of the dwelling in proximity to the tree roots. It's therefore considered that the dwelling can be built without unacceptable impact to trees. In turning to the highways aspects, it is considered the proposals provide adequate on-site parking and manoeuvring space. The access is proposed to connect to an existing private drive which serves the site already, as well as two dwellings to the north. The use of the private drive for this dwelling and the available visibility at Grange Road require assessment. The drive is single width and a tarmac surface, and the Highway Authority indicated that due to the lightly trafficked and slow speeds of traffic using Grange Road, they would expect visibility displays of 36 metres in both directions. Visibility to the north meets this requirement. However, to the south, due to some encroachment into the highway verge by Pondview Cottage, visibility is reduced to 30 metres. This was a matter that was assessed when the outline application was approved, and it was seen that a 6 metre shortfall in visibility for a single dwelling on a lightly trafficked road would be acceptable, especially given the drive is in use for two existing dwellings. The Highway Authority has not raised an objection to this application given the previous approval. In conclusion, the principle of the development has been established by the earlier outline approval. The development is in its further revised form will not result in demonstrable harm to the character and appearance of the area, to residential amenity, to nearby trees or highway safety. The recommendation therefore is to grant reserved matters approval subject to the conditions set out on page 64 of your agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Apologies. Thank you, Officer Brooks. That's great. And members, do you have any questions in relation to that presentation, please? No? Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. We will now move on to our public speaking. And we don't have any representation from the Parish Council, but we do have residents who wish to voice their objection to this application. So if, Officer Atherton, if you could please unmute Mr. Dosser, please.
I have requested, sorry, Ms. Dosser, could you accept the unmute? Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Dosser, if I can just explain to you that unfortunately you will have 5 minutes to address the committee, and unfortunately we don't have a clock that we can show on the screen, so that would block you from the members of the committee. However, our host will let you know whenever you have 1 minute remaining. Is that acceptable to you?
Yes, that's fine, Madam Chair.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And Mr. Dosser, if you could please introduce yourself to the committee, and you will have 5 minutes starting from now.
Okay, good morning to you all. My name's Tony Dosser and I live in the old Coach House Gardens. I would like to read, if I may, Madam Chair. I'd like to object to this application with particular regard to the following: size, impact on established trees, overlooking and vision displays. With regards to size, I would like to advise the committee this proposed property with a footprint of 185 square metres is larger than Hainford's Village Hall, our Village Hall, and twice the height. Consequently, totally inappropriate for this location. This view is shared and reported by both the parish council and local residents. It has been described on occasions as both massive and enormous. With regards to the trees, I own the trees. A row of adjacent well-established palm trees are considered to provide a level of essential screening on the west side, and their retention has been described as paramount with respect to this application. The amended drawings show this property now encroaches the RPA root protection area at both the east and west boundaries. The applicable standard states encroachment should only occur when unavoidable. Even allowing for a 20% relaxation if the trees had been topped, and as the photos showed, they have not been, encroachment still occurs. With respect to the flood risk, excuse me, the amount of water captured by this property with its large footprint will provide in excess of 2,000 gallons per day with less than half an inch of rain. This can only add to and worsen localised flooding already experienced with a far more moderate measured rainfall. Even a smaller property in this location will require careful rainwater management to minimise flooding risks. With respect to overlooking, if a development is to be built of this magnitude as specified, just 15 metres from the nearest facing property, then I think the overlooking and overbearing impact created by a property of this size speaks for itself. With respect to the access to Grange Road with vision displays, this issue has been contentious for some time with BDC planners, claiming in 2017 a display of just 6 metres short of the minimum would be achieved, as stated, by recovering alleged highway encroachment. Consequently, they persuaded your committee against BDC Highways recommendations to approve an outline application. Subsequent investigation has identified that any alleged encroachment and recovery in cases such as this would inevitably involve a legal challenge. Norfolk Highways indicate they would not engage in this type of legal dispute for this type of application, as even if successful, established policies would preclude any possible land recovery, just to facilitate vision display improvements. It is considered not unreasonable for residents to expect that the vision display's parameters, as claimed by BDC in 2017, are shown to be implemented or planned to facilitate the build, particularly as similar recent applications for the same exit have been refused, citing vision display non-compliance as a material consideration. In summary, this property is considered to be far too large, even with the insignificant amended reduction of half a metre in width. Please note, within the architect's planning design and accent statement, he chooses the word domineering to associate with the character of this development, probably very true. Parish council and local residents still consider this squeezed in property between east to west boundaries adversely impacts on RPA's root protection areas. In addition, it constitutes overdevelopment, exacerbates existing flooding issues.
1 minute remaining.
Thank you. As well as having a possible catastrophic effect on all or at least some of the attractive existing, well-loved established Scotch pine trees. This presentation is not intended to persuade you to prevent the build of a new property. Moreover, that this proposed new build in the rear garden of a traditional cottage should be of a size at least to reflect comparisons with local existing properties rather than dominate the area. This property creates overdevelopment, impact adversely on an attractive tree belt, increases flood risks, and finally, this application should demonstrate compliance with claimed vision displays as described. I'd like to finally finish to say that most of these issues can be easily mitigated by just making the property compliant and smaller.
Okay.
Thank you very much for your time, committee members and chair. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. And members, do you have any questions for our public speaker today? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your time. We will move on to our second public speaker, and is Mr. Shooter. Officer Atherton, could you unmute Mr. Shooter, please?
I have requested. Could you just, thank you.
Okay, good morning, Mr. Shooter. Thank you very much for your time this morning. And if I can just remind you that you will have 5 minutes to address the committee. when it gets to 1 minute before your 5 minutes, is that the host will remind you that you have 1 minute remaining. Is that acceptable to you?
It is. Can I just confirm you can hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear. If I can just ask you, please, to introduce yourself to the committee, and you will have 5 minutes starting from now.
Thank you. Good morning. My name's Alan Tutor. I'm a neighbour of the proposed development site and live in the old coach house. To start with, I'd like, on behalf of Mr. Dosser and myself, because we have worked collectively on this, to thank you for considering this application and our objections. As a start, I'd like to record my support and endorsement for the points Mr. Dosser has raised in his detailed presentation. What I specifically would like to do is to give our objections some context and re-highlight the main issues. Mr. Dosser and I are not NIMBYs. We recognise that a property will be built on the site concerned, but we would like to see one which is appropriate to the site, does not change the rural nature of the area, and does not add to the increased risk of flash flooding, which we've all experienced recently. To highlight the main points of our objection, the proposed building is indeed massive. It's too large for the plot and is out of scale with neighbouring properties. The actual person putting the development in claims it's very similar in size to the neighbouring well-established or recently built executive houses. It's not. It's close to twice the size of one of those. The footprint would impinge on the formally established root protection areas. The proposal states that it's acceptable when there is no alternative. In this instance, there is an alternative. Simply make the building smaller. Because of this size and roof area, the drainage system, which is already under pressure, will be even under more pressure. As an indication of how much rainwater will come off, I did the simple calculation that according to Mr. Dosser's view, the amount of water that will come off during average rainfall in a day would require a storage area too big and likely to be too expensive to be put in. The amount of water coming off would enable a toilet to be flushed 2,000 times a day. I don't think that's very likely. So in conclusion, we would ask that the Planning Committee recognises the views of Hainford Parish Council and the points made by us at this meeting, and ask the developer to submit a revised proposal for a significantly smaller building. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shooter. Members of the committee, do you have any questions for Mr. Shooter this morning? Okay, I can't see anyone, but thank you very much, Mr. Shooter, for your time this morning as well. And we will now move on to Mr. Dane. Mr. Daines, sorry, Officer Arthurton, could you please unmute Mr. Daines?
Hello.
Can you turn your video on for us, please?
I'm afraid my camera doesn't appear to be working, so unfortunately it is what it is. So hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
yes,
you.
Sorry, yeah, my camera doesn't appear to work, but
okay,
as long as you can hopefully hear me, I'm sure you're not missing much.
Can you hear me quite clearly?
Yes, I can.
Okay, that's fine. Now, I just needed to advise you, the same as I have the other public speakers, that you will have 5 minutes to address the committee. The host will advise you when you have 1 minute remaining. Is that acceptable to you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, if I can ask you please to address the committee, introduce yourself and address the committee, and you have 5 minutes starting now.
Thank you. My name is Gary Daines, represent Broadland Architectural, designers of the proposed development. Good morning. And firstly, I'd like to thank the committee for permitting me to speak and clarify for the record that I'm obviously in support of the application. I should also add that I'm actually surprised that this application has been called up for discussion, seeing how planning support the application, and there have been few real objections other than the two previously mentioned. And under normal circumstances, it would probably have gone through under delegated decisions. However, it is what it is. And I simply wish to highlight a few key points in the application and clarify the thinking behind the design to know how we stood. As has previously been mentioned, shouldn't be forgetting that plan application has been approved for development on this site. And that's for a 4-bedroom detached house with a garage. And therefore, obviously, the points we're discussing are for the reserved matters, which I'll hope we can agree on and improve today. The original design concept for the property, because it's in a rural location, was to create an old barn, which appears to historically have been on the site for years, and which in turn has then been developed. So hence why you've got the main structure and the extension pieces to the side. So thought has gone into design, hence why the building is designed from the base up with lots of key features, including wide plinth base walls, buttresses, blind windows, wall ties, mixture textures, all to give the property a unique design and style. People have criticised the design. It is designed to look like an old barn, back of the cottages, sitting in a paddock, deliberately and on purpose, a rural property in a rural location, not an off the peg, 4-bedroom modern house, as would be so easy to do. You could have got one standard drawings, put it there. The property was designed specifically to suit the plot. And we hope that has been appreciated. We've taken on board various comments and points raised by neighbours and planning as we've developed design, has been shown by planning. The orientation has changed, the size has changed, we've moved it around the plot, we've changed things in order to appease various points that have been raised through the things, and subsequently Broadland Planning have backed the design, and the conservation and tree officers have no objections to the trees and any effect that will have upon them, as has been shown in the tree survey. By default, as I mentioned, approval was given to a 4-bedroom house, and by default, a 4-bedroom house with garage is going to be a large property. This property in real terms is not much larger than any other 4-bedroom property would be. In fact, it's a 1.5-story property, whereas approval was given to a 4-bedroom 2-story property, which would be even larger and potentially more overlooking than what we've designed as a 1.5-story property. The building to plot ratio has been criticised, and it works out to 1:4, which is equal to most modern developments, including most of the properties in Old Coach House Gardens, where it's been criticised the development is too large for the plot. So the plot to building ratio is basically the same as most other, if not better than a lot of modern properties nowadays, given how important land is. Yeah, along these lines, comments have been made that the building is imposing in relation to other neighbouring properties. This again is confusing because there aren't any real neighbouring properties. It's packed in the middle of lots of other buildings. The property is well spaced within an ample plot and no less imposing than any other local
1 minute
properties.
remaining.
Okay, thank you. Points have also been raised to stating the design of the property is not in keeping with the area. This again is questionable and contradictory. As has been mentioned, Hainford is a historical village. This has been designed exactly to look like a converted farmhouse. If this property was put in the middle of Helsden or middle of Unthank Road in Norwich, where you've got bungalows or Edwardian houses, yes, it would look out of place. It is designed as an old barn in a rural location, specifically for those reasons, hence why it looks like it does. I should also point out the applicant has lived in Hainford for 25 years, and obviously he's not just a property developer moved in. He wants to build a house on his land that he owns for himself, and he wants a nice, distinct and unique property, which we hope to have shown. So basically, to summarise, plan and support the application. Approval has been given to develop a 4-bedroom property to this site. There's been a minimal number of objections, most of which the issues have been addressed. The property has a plot to building ratio well within what is acceptable. It's not imposing, nor overlooks anyone, being in quite a big plot. It's been designed as a rural property.
Okay, I think that would just be about your time.
5 minutes,
okay,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time, Mr. Daines. And members,
Okay.
do you have any questions for Mr. Daines? No, Mr. Daines, I don't see anybody asking
Okay, thank you.
to
and sorry
speak
for the
to you.
lack of vision. But
No, that's okay. Thank you for your time this morning. And we will now move on to our last speaker for this morning, and it is Councillor Nazim. And if Officer Appleton, if you could please unmute Councillor Nazim, please. And let me just check that you are unmuted. Okay, If you could please introduce yourself to the committee, and again, you're happy with the 5 minutes and the 1 minute to advise you. Wonderful, thank you.
That's fine. Thank you very much.
If you just introduce yourself and you have 5
Yeah,
minutes
sure.
from there.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to speak, Chair. I'm District Councillor Julie Neeson, representing Hainford Ward, which covers the village of Hainford, which is the area we're speaking about today. I'm one of the more newly elected district councillors here today, and I won't pretend to have an in-depth knowledge of planning law and policy, and I don't plan to suggest that I know more than a Broadland Council planning officer either. Also, I don't live near the proposed application build, so it doesn't affect me personally. My role is solely to represent the residents of the ward where I'm elected as a member. The basis of the residents and Hainford Parish Council objections to this build is not about trying to prevent a dwelling being built on the land, nor have I received objections to the style of the building, which does look very attractive. It's to ask committee to consider whether the current size of the proposed build and its siting so near to the boundary of neighbours is reasonable and proportionate, and also to request that policy is applied consistently in this instance. So the first area of concern lies with the size of the proposed dwelling, as has been raised by other residents today. My understanding is that it has a square footage that's approximately the same as the local village hall. For a 4-bedroom property, this does seem quite domineering, which is a word used by the planning agent in their own report, and a property of this size does not seem proportionate to other similar 4-bedroom homes. As a result of this domineering size, the property and its proposed location currently indicates that it does impinge on the British standard root protection area of the row of neighbouring mature trees. My understanding of this policy states that the RPA should not be encroached unless avoidable. While the building processes may attempt to protect the trees, as was outlined in the planning officer's statement, it doesn't account for the ongoing impact of a building of this size on the ongoing soil quality available to the trees in the future. And this would certainly be improved by reducing the size of the dwelling. I believe that to date, there hasn't been a site visit from either a tree officer or a planning officer to help them to understand the potential impact of the build on the trees and their root systems. It's common knowledge that mature trees, which take decades to grow, are vital to conserving our environment and to prevent climate change. And as you all know, Broadland Council is taking great steps to ensure the future of our environmental legacy. And in this National Tree Week, a commitment to prevent harm to our local trees would be consistent with this vision. Another concern raised is around accessibility of the site and the visibility leading onto the road. My understanding is that current policy states that standard for encroachment is 43 metres, but a relaxed standard of 36 metres is allowable. Currently, the proposal shows that this would be 30 metres. The planning officer's report suggests it will meet the 36-metre relaxed standard when the encroachment is recovered. I'd like to ask whether committee will consider when this is likely to happen. And will it be before the dwelling is built? I ask because it's my understanding that Broadland District Council and Highways do not have a recent record of funding recovery of encroachment on builds of this size. This suggests that it's very unlikely the build will ever meet the relaxed standards of 36 metres. While this decision may be considered the norm in planning, I'm concerned that a similar application in the same area was refused approximately a year ago, citing these encroachment issues as a reason for the refusal. On this basis, it would only be reasonable to ensure that responses to applications in Broadland remain consistent. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time. Okay, members, do you have any questions in relation to the councillors' public speaking? No? Okay, thank you very much for your time. It's very much appreciated. And just before we go into discussion, members, I would just I'd like to ask the officers if they could just address a couple of the points that the public speakers made today. And I'm not sure whether it's Officer Mellors or Officer Rook who would be able to just confirm in relation to the
I'll do that,
trees.
Sue. Yeah.
Okay, could you just address the points that were made about the trees? Mr. Dosser said about the trees, he got concerns that they weren't being protected.
Insofar as the tree, there was a few things. I'm glad. Thank you for the opportunity to come back in. There was a few things I wanted to respond to. The trees being one of those. As the public speakers were talking, I was just looking back at the arboricultural report itself, and yeah, that does evidence that they will be undertaking special measures to look at the tree roots themselves. You've seen on the screen the position of the the theoretical root protection area based on the trunk diameter of those trees, but it's only once the actual any excavation takes place that they actually can understand the size of the tree roots in proximity to the foundations. The arboricultural method statement, which your conservation officer has seen and has agreed, makes it clear that they will be doing sort of test digs just to see what the tree roots are, the size of the tree roots in that position, and to assess whether if they are of more than, I think it says 25 millimeters diameter, that they then have to consider whether special root protection measures are undertaken and special foundations are designed so that the root foundation, so that the roots aren't adversely affected by the foundation construction. Normally a foundation would be a trench, it would dig down and it would then sort of sever the roots. What a specialist foundation would do would give a sort of raft foundation, which is a much shallower kind of construction, and therefore tree roots would then not be affected in the same way as a trench foundation would be. And that's what the arboricultural method statement recommends, with agreement with the arboricultural officer. And that's why your arboricultural officer has seen that and agreed that with specific reference to the details that have been submitted. So he's had regard to those specific points.
Okay, thank you. And members can come back to you on that in just a moment. Mr. Shooter was concerned about the rainwater.
Yes, the rainwater, in relation to that, on the application form, it says that the details are to be, so that the rainwater be directed to a soakaway. That soakaway would be designed with building control requirements, so that they would have to evidence that the size of the soakaway was appropriate relative to the runoff off of the roof. So that would be picked up by building regulations. There was a couple of other things I wanted just to come back on as well. Mr. Daines mentioned that permission had been granted for a 4-bed house on this site. The outline approval was all matters reserved. It may have been described as a 4-bed house, but we haven't approved a position, a layout, a size or anything like that. All that the outline has done is establish the principle of a dwelling on this site. The reserve matters, which is now before members, is now considering that arrangement, that layout, the form, the size on this plot. So that is relevant for today to consider those elements. And the other thing I wanted to mention, Chairman, just before we move on, a couple of speakers mentioned about a refusal, and they were arguing that it wasn't consistent with the approach we're taking here, where we're recommending approval, and the refusal. The refusal was on a site outside of the settlement limit. It was on a plot off of the private drive, and it was for 2 or 3 dwellings off the top of my head. So it was different circumstances. And that was the reason that it was refused, because it was put in 2 or 3 houses outside the settlement limit, and the additional traffic movements associated with those 3 houses, 2 or 3 houses, would increase the additional traffic onto that junction with Grange Road. Whereas officers are saying that this access is already in use by the applicant. You've seen the photographs of the site with his vehicles on there. So he's already taking vehicles in and out of that access onto his site. And that's where there's a distinction between this application for 1 dwelling within the settlement limit and the refusal for 3 dwellings, I think it was, further north of the site outside the settlement limit, which was refused. And that's the distinction.
Okay, thank you. And I've just got 2 more that Councillor Nazim has addressed. And can you just confirm, I know that we are in a COVID situation, but an officer has been to visit this site.
Case officer's been to the site. That's who took the photographs. The photographs you've seen have been taken by the case officer. Yes.
Okay, that's good. And the lastly is it was again just to address what Councillor Nazim has said about the 30 and the 36 metres, which you've just covered that.
The access.
Yes.
Yeah, the access. And from my point of view, I don't know whether this was something that got misinterpreted. From our point, we're recognising that the access is 6 metres short in the southern direction. It meets it to the northern direction. It's over it's over highway verge, but there's an encroachment by a third party. We're not saying that we're going to go in and remove that encroachment. It's something unfair to say that members need to consider whether a visibility display at 30 metres, 6 metres short of the required distance, is acceptable. And that's what officers are recommending. We think it is, given the circumstances of the lightly traffic road and the existence of other vehicles using that private drive. So we're not looking to say that this will achieve 36 metres, in the future. We're saying it achieves 36 to the northern direction, but achieves 30 to the southern direction.
Okay, thank you. Okay, apologies, members, but I just needed to address those, the public speakers' points. So, members, do you have any questions? We'll go into discussion now, and once we've had our open discussion, we will then have a proposer and a seconder, and then we will vote on the decision. And I can see that we've got, if can we just unmute the committee for me, please? Okay, so if we start with Councillor Ward, I can see your hands. So shall we go with this?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Well, it is a large property, and I think it's rather tight on the site. I was a bit concerned about the tree roots, but Officer Brooke has put my mind at rest largely on that. I think the visibility is okay on balance because there's such light traffic on that road. So overall, I think this development is acceptable on this site, and I would like to move officer's recommendation.
Okay, and we will move to Councillor Riley.
Hello.
Councillor Riley, can you hear me?
Thank you. Sorry, Chair, it went a bit muffly then.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, for asking the officer to clarify some of the points from the public speakers. You've actually asked the questions I was wanting to ask. Well done, Chair, on that one. I believe I heard you say, Matthew, that on the issue of the 36 metres, highways, they're aware of this and they've raised no objections to that? Is that what you said?
That's correct. Their view is that they raised their concerns at the outline stage. Right. And those concerns, that's one of the reasons it was reported to committee previously. Committee took the view that they thought that it was acceptable at that time. And I think what the highways view is that given that committee have previously made that, given that view, that the Highways Authority aren't pursuing an objection in that regard. Therefore, as you see in your report, they're raising no objections on that basis, albeit recognising that there is still this shortfall in provision, but given the previous outline acceptance, they're not pursuing that objection.
So just one clear. I was confused about that because I'm thinking, I know highways don't ever come out with a clear position one way or the other. We've had it before within this committee as well. So what you're saying is because it already had outlining and the previous planning committee had given it outlining, taking that in consideration, they've just dropped their objection. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fulcher.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. There have been several comments from public speakers about the rainfall situation, and clearly that if there is a problem with average rainfall, with the event of climate change, this can only be exacerbated. And I'd just like to ask the officer whether he is really content that what has been proposed with the soakaway, etc., is adequate for a potential increase in rainfall.
I am content, as I said in my presentation. It's something that building regs have to have regard to in relation to the soakaway, the design of that as a particular feature to accommodate any issue that will come in that way. Yeah, that's that's as much as I think I can say. It's recognised it's an issue, but it's an issue that could be resolved through appropriate control through the building regulations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Broughton.
It's the highways issue again. I went out there on Sunday morning and I drove up one way and I drove down the other, and I then had the temerity to reverse into the little side road in question and then tried to pull out, as will be happening to all these extra cars and everybody who already lives there. I had to pull out an awful long way to see round to my right. I think it's the right. I'm not very good on rights and lefts. I had to pull out quite a way, and indeed I had to jam on my brakes even on Sunday morning because something was coming along there, and I thought, I don't like it. End of my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Adams.
Right, thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, this is one of those which you could argue, I think, either way. And there's the question of whether you think the reasonable development or not development. I think really the basis comes down to DC4 design, because basically I think this is what it revolves around, that DC4 design says that you have to take regard to the environment, character and appearance of the area. And I think the case there is, do you feel this is slightly large for this particular area, reinforcing local distinctiveness through careful consideration of the treatment of space throughout the development? Are we happy with that? And considering the impact on the amenity of existing residents, again, you could argue either way on that. At the moment, Madam Chairman, I really haven't made up my mind whether, in my view, and it is just my view, this is acceptable given its size and bulk, or whether it isn't. So I'm still, I can at the moment, I could go either way on that one.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, have I missed anybody just in the Councillor Nigel Brennan, if you'd like to have your say, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, yes, I have no objection to the principle of building going in there, but my concern is also size and scale, and to me it just seems too much for the plot of land that's available. It needs to be reduced in size, in other words.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Matthew, can I just ask you, in relation to what Mr. Dane said about the height of this 4-bedroom house in comparison to others, he states that this is 1.5 times the size of a normal 4-bedroom house. Is that it's 1.5 times less? It's you know what I'm saying?
The design is a 1.5 story, so it's not a full 2-story house as most of the other ones are around it. That's why it's been designed as a more of a traditional sort of barn appearance. And you think of a barn, it does tend to be, a single story with a larger roof to it, and that's the form that it's taken. So, no, from the report, from the presentation, it's set behind 2-story cottages. There's 2-story houses around it. I don't think it would be a case that it would be out of place within the street scene. I don't think it would, people have said domineering. That's not a view that I share. I wouldn't say it would be domineering. I think it has provided space around the property, provided space to the boundaries, evidenced by tree officers coming back to say they've got no objection to it relative to the trees. Yeah, that's why the officers have recommended approval for it, because we feel it is an acceptable form of design and appearance within the plot and within the surrounding area.
Okay, I would like to second Councillor Ward's proposal that we should agree to the officer's recommendation. On this site is already being used, so it's not a site that is uninhabited at the moment. And in comparison to the amount of cars that I would anticipate would a 4-bedroom house would bring to the amount of cars that we've just seen the photographs on site that are already there, I think that there's got to be some kind of reduction in the traffic that would be going in and out of that site. And in relation to the water and to the flooding and the rainfall, I think, as the officer has said, that building control will determine the soakaway, the size of the soakaway that's going to go in there, and they will determine that it is big enough to take the rainfall that's going to come in whatever rainfall that we're going to get in the foreseeable future. So I think that it is acceptable that we should go with the officer's recommendation in this case, and I will second the proposal. Does anybody else have anything that they'd like to say? And I can see who's
apologies.
Councillor Leggett.
Councillor Beadle as well, sorry, Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Leggett.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chairman. I wasn't at the previous meeting, but on page 56, 4.4, it clearly says your authority will be aware of the Highway Authority view of further development proposals to be served via the substandard track that allows access to the site. So am I right in saying that in the previous application, Highways Authority did object, but they obviously, it was then approved, but they didn't take any further action. So I assume they must have accepted at that time. And was the access then still 30 as opposed to 36 metres? Thank you, Chairman.
Through you, Chair, I'll reply to that, Councillor Leggett. Yes, you're correct. The Highway Authority did raise an objection to the outline application. Members considered that at their meeting in March 2018, I think it was. They saw the photographs, and it was the same arrangement that you've got before you today. 36-metre visibility in the northern direction and 30 metres in visibility in the southern direction. Members considered that at that time and granted the approval, the principle of an outline application. And subsequent to that, the Highway Authority are not raising an objection to the current scheme.
Thank you. And as I think you said, you didn't anticipate that the increased amount of traffic would be to any great extent at all.
It's a bit of crystal ball gazing, because obviously you've got to anticipate the number of cars that would be expected, but it's a single family property. So you'd expect 2 or 3 cars for a property like that. It's got 2 parking spaces and areas parking to the front. As Councillor Lorne has said, there's already a number of cars already accessing in and out of that site, which are owned by the applicant. So it's a view that I've taken that there's already vehicles in and out of that site utilising that access, and as part of these proposals, they as a dwelling, I wouldn't anticipate that their increase. They may very well decrease.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Beadle?
Thank you, Chair.
Apologies that I didn't see you sooner.
No, it's quite all right. It's quite all right. I've got the benefit of listening to other people speaking. Yes, so thank you very much for this. The principle has been accepted of development on this site, so I don't see that we can really sort of raise issue with the access to and from the lane, whether it's correct or not. it's already been viewed that any objection is not sufficient to stop development on this site. The question I would like to ask, Chair, is that the height of this proposed building, what is it in metres, and how does it relate to the neighbouring property, and how high are they? Because, you know, 1.5 storey can be significantly higher than 2 storey in different situations. So we have neighbouring properties, both the other side of the conifers and to the front of this property and to the rear of this property. Do we know that information of what height they are, please?
Through you, Madam Chairman, I'm just having a quick look. On the elevation, we've got a height, the carport is a specific height of 6.9 metres to the carport. The ridge height of the dwelling is above that, but estimating, we don't have an actual specified height of the ridge height. Let me just check it's not on the rear elevation. Oh no, it is, it's on the side elevation. 7.4 metres is the ridge height of the proposed dwelling. I don't have the height of, because I don't have any surveys of the existing surrounding residential properties. But as I've said, they're standard 2 storey. So I would expect those to be taller than that. So yes, insofar as the height of that, 7.4 metres is the ridge height of the proposed dwelling. I'd anticipate at 1.5 storeys that wouldn't be as high as the surrounding properties, which from the photographs are standard 2 storey houses. You'd expect those to have a height probably more about, I don't know, Helen, would you say 9-10 metres, something like that?
2-storey dwellings can actually vary, I would say, between 7 and 8 metres in total height. I think it might be worth just sharing the image, because I think the footprint obviously includes the carport, and I think if members are struggling with whether or not the scale of the dwellings, etc., it might be worth just showing that image again, because I think it has been designed as a 1.5 storey. It is quite modest in its height for a 1.5 storey property. It has still got quite a shallow pitch as far as that's concerned. So I think it's just, if we can just go to those images. Councillor Beadle is quite correct in saying that the access has already been agreed and that amount of traffic to the site by granting the outline permission. So we are looking at that form. I think that photograph's quite helpful, because you can see that is quite a substantial 2-storey dwelling adjacent to the site there. And if you just go to the proposed dwelling,
and that's the neighbouring
property. So you can say there are substantial properties within the vicinity of the dwelling. So we are looking at whether or not that the new dwelling is in character and keeping. As Matt said in his presentation, it has been designed to have that rural feel about it. It's not a full 2-storey. So if we just go to that, you can see that from that's the chalets, but that elevation is actually showing that in its sort of scale and form. So it's not as bulky, I would say, as the surrounding properties, and has been designed for this infill plot in particular as a chalet type bungalow.
Okay, Councillor Beadle, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, thank you. I can't see the screen again, so if is there anyone else here who would like to speak that I can't see?
We'll just remove that.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Riley.
Get there, sorry.
Yeah, as Helen said, Matthew, it depends upon the pitch, the height. So sometimes you can have a shallow pitch right the way down to 20, 22 or 24 degrees in extreme circumstances. This is a 40-degree pitch. So this is a kind of average pitch for a house. Modern houses tend to have lower than this these days, but anyway. But if you look at that 40-degree pitch on a 2-bedroom house, on a 2-storey house, by definition, if it's a 40-degree pitch on the rest of them, puts it higher than this house. I think it's a good point that Stuart's asked there, actually, because sometimes 1.5, and depending upon the pitch, can be considerably higher. So I think it's a good question that Stuart asked there, actually.
Okay, thank you. Members, any further questions? Any further discussion? Nope. Okay, I think that we can go to the vote now. And Councillor Matthews. Officer Matthews, if you'd like to do the roll call, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So you've got a proposal in front of you that's been seconded to vote in favour of the officer recommendation. So if I could ask you to indicate if you are for or against. Councillor Adams. Sorry, I didn't catch that, Councillor Adams. Do apologise. Thank you. Councillor Beadle.
For.
Councillor Brennan.
For.
Councillor Folger.
For.
Councillor Karimi Guvanloo.
For.
Councillor Lawn.
For.
Councillor Leggett.
For.
Councillor Moncur.
For.
Councillor Prutton.
Against.
Councillor Riley.
I'm abstaining on the basis of the highway situation, that the previous committee didn't take that on board, and therefore I'm going to have to abstain on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Ward.
For.
Thank you, Chairman. That's carried.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your time, ladies and gentlemen, this morning. And the committee will now go to a 5-minute recess. And it's now 11:23. So if you could please be all back at your screen for 11:28. If you can please mute your screen and turn your video off whilst we have that 5-minute break. Thank you. Okay, hopefully we shouldn't be too much longer before the committee are joining us again.
Just Councillor Leggett and Councillor Riley, I believe, Chairman.
Okay, we'll just give them another minute. And we've got Dr. Foreman as well. Councillor Leggett.
I have requested both of them to turn the camera on.
Okay, thank you. Five minutes obviously goes quite quickly.
I said, ask you to start your video. Oh.
Thank you, Councillor Leggett. And we're just waiting for Councillor Riley. Okay, if we can
Can I just start the roll call, Chairman? Maybe he will have joined us.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. Hopefully
Okay.
he will be there by the time you get to the end of it.
Thank you. If you just can confirm your attendance. Councillor Adams?
Here.
Councillor Beadle?
Here.
Councillor Brennan?
Present.
Councillor Folger?
Councillor Ford, you're on mute.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Karimi Guvanlu?
Present.
Councillor Lawn?
Present.
Councillor Leggett?
Present.
Councillor Moncur?
Here and on time.
Councillor Pretton?
Present.
Councillor Riley? Councillor
Councillor
Ward, you're with
Riley?
us?
Present.
Thank you. So at the moment, Chairman, we still haven't got Councillor Riley back with us.
Okay, well, we will get Dr. Foreman unmuted. We will go as far as the presentation. And if Councillor Riley doesn't join us, then we will
the
continue.
presentation, Chairman. Councillor Riley won't be able to vote on the
Yeah, I was about to say that. Yeah.
But we're already almost 5 minutes over the time scale that we'd set. So okay.
And we waited for him at the beginning as well.
Oh,
Okay.
he's with us. Sorry, Chairman, he's just joined.
Councillor Riley.
Sorry, Chair. We've only got one trap in operation at the moment. We've got builders in. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Too much information there, I know.
Okay, so can you just confirm your attendance
I'm
as
here.
present, please? Thank you. Okay, and Dr. Foreman, thank you for joining us this morning. We will now move on to our fourth and final application for this morning, and it's 2020-0699 Thorpe St Andrew. And if I can ask Officer Roop, if you could please go ahead with the presentation. Thank you.
Yes, hello everyone, you can hear me. I'll just put my screen on. Okay, can you see that?
Yes, we can, thank you.
Yes, so this is the site at 32 to 36 Harvey Lane, Thorpe St Andrew. This is a full planning application for the demolition of garage buildings and the erection of 4 dwellings and also 4 apartments. Just go through the slides. Let me just, where does that every time? There we go. Okay, the application site, it is identified just here, just to the east of Harvey Lane at its junction with Bolton Road, within the built-up area of Thorpe St Andrew and within the settlement limit. This is the application site itself, so it extends to include an area of car sales or former car sales to the front of the site and vehicle repairs to the rear. Access is achieved at this position here. And as I mentioned, we're on the junction of Harvey Lane and Bolton Road. Mixture of semi-detached houses on this side of Harvey Lane, detached chalets here, and detached bungalows primarily along Bolton Road. Identified here isn't quite right because the application site actually includes this part here, and there is an additional dwelling outside of the application site, this one here, number 32A Harvey Lane, which I think we'll see more clearly on the next shot. Yes, there you go. So this is a sort of an aerial photograph of the site. I mentioned before the sort of the bungalows along Bolton Road here, and number 32A, which is this property here, which is accessed by a little drive off of Bolton Road there. I think it does have a pedestrian access back onto Harvey Lane, and then some of the properties in the surrounding area. But you can see this photograph was taken when the site was in operation as a garage, vehicle repair. So there's lots of cars either being worked on or about to be worked on as part of that. That is currently closed. So on that basis, that's no longer operating, but it shows you the context of the site and the surroundings and the neighbouring properties. Another neighbouring property here, number 3 Lime Tree Avenue, which is access to Lime Tree Avenue running down here. Then run into the site layout plan. So I mentioned the application is sort of for 8 dwellings in total. 4 of them are comprising 2 pairs of semi-detached houses, and these are the semi-detached 3-bed semi-detached houses which front onto Bolton Road here. Each of those has 2 parking spaces, so 2 for that one, 2 for that one, 2 for that one, and 2 for that one. Each of those has garden spaces and areas for bin storage. So the bins are stored at the back of the property, brought forward onto the collection points here and here on bin collection days. Then the second part of the application is an area of 4 flats, which are these here, all under one roof. 3 of those are accessed by this Harvey Lane entrance straight into the front door. So we've got 2 on the right hand side, which are accessed from that front door, like a communal sort of doorway here. And then the 4th flat is actually accessed off of this doorway here to Bolton Road, and a car parking space provided for that flat. 3 further parking spaces are provided here, a little off-road sort of parking and turning area with a visitor space provided, and a little storage, bin store and cycle store, secure building, which again, bins would then be pulled out for there on bin collection day and stored away. So a communal sort of provision for the flats themselves, which is identified there. And the flats are provided with a sort of communal garden to the front of the site. And you can see, I mentioned number 32A, which is this property here, which is then provided with a footpath of pedestrian access to the front, and it's retained its access to the rear. The neighbouring property, neighbouring plot to the east here has got planning permission, and its construction has started for that for 2 dwellings in a pair of semi-detached properties. There's a plan of that shortly. Moving through the elevation. So this is the elevation of the flat. So that will be the view from Harvey Lane. As I said, it's all the 4 flats are built under one roof with a door which serves flats 1, 2, and 3. And then flat 4 is served by a door onto the elevation towards Bolton Road. But this does also show a little low wall and a hedge to the front, and access into the parking area for the flats. That's the bin and cycle store. And then turning the corner, so we come around Harvey Lane, come into Bolton Road, and then the flats sort of turn the corner as well. So it's got windows towards Bolton Road, and then that's the arrangement for the 4 properties and the 2 pairs of semi-detached houses. So that's the arrangement for those. Then that's the rear elevation of the semi-detached houses with 1st floor windows. Bedrooms, 3rd bedroom is up in the roof space for each of those properties. Floor plans, so you can see the ground floor arranged. As I said, flats are arranged, 1-bed flats. Each one of these is a 1-bed flat. This one has its entrance off onto Bolton Road, and then these are provided with lounge and kitchen at ground floor, 2 bedrooms 2 and 3 at first floor, and then a 3rd floor up in the roof space for the houses. Photographs of the site. Members probably recognise the context of the site. This is the existing Harvey Lane car sales, 2-storey flat roof building. So that will all be demolished, as will the buildings that you can see here to the rear, to facilitate the development. That's a view down Bolton Road. There are double yellow lines currently in existence in those positions. Comments have been made about the requirement to reinstate those, and that's something that's considered within the report. Views from just around the site, so you can see the building and the context of the existing or the car repairs and the amount of cars that were stored whilst they were waiting to be serviced or MOT'd. And the context of the surrounding properties, the hipped roofed properties in the surrounding area, which very much reflects the form of the proposed dwellings. Views along Bolton Road. I mentioned this is the site that's just under construction for the pair of semi-detached properties just to the east of the application site, and that's in that form. So that's designed, that's the front elevation of that pair. Once again, rooms up in the roof, albeit under a sort of dormer windows to the front. And this plan here just shows that that's got parking spaces to the front, which would reflect the parking spaces proposed to Bolton Road. Some more views from within the site. Obviously, this was when it was with the car sales. So it's got cars that were for sale at the time out of the front of the forecourt, and the neighbouring property at number 1A, which is a chalet. You can see that there. This area here would all be demolished to make way for the parking area for the flats, and the bin store and cycle store would be at the frontage of the site, about that position there. Just some views across the frontage of the site. Once again, you can see, so this is looking within the site, looking opposite across the road to the semi-detached houses on the opposite side of Harvey Lane, hipped roofed form, which very much sort of reflects the form that's being proposed. A little bit further down Harvey Lane, just before the road drops down the hill, there's a block of flats there, albeit those are 2.5 storey because they've got accommodation in the roof, but there is other communal buildings in the locality. And some views on Lime Tree Avenue, just looking back across the frontage of the properties on Lime Tree Avenue. The application site is just beyond that fence line there. And then back to that main slide. Going to the presentation, I'll leave that one on. So as I said, this application seeks full planning permission for 8 new dwellings, demolition of the existing car sales and vehicle repairs, 8 dwellings comprising 4 houses of the 2 pairs of semi-detached and 4 flats. The application is brought before committee for determination as the proposed redevelopment of the site would result in the loss of an employment site. As I mentioned at the beginning, the application site is located within the settlement limit defined for Thorpe St Andrew amongst a variety of different house types, including detached bungalows, chalets and houses, and semi-detached houses predominantly opposite the site. Although the site's last use was as employment, the site has not been allocated for this purpose. Therefore, a residential redevelopment is acceptable within the settlement limit. There are no updates to make you aware of in your supplementary schedule. The issues for consideration are whether the position and design of the houses are appropriate with regard to the character and appearance of the area and neighbour amenities, whether the proposed access and parking arrangements are acceptable. The houses have been designed so that 4 flats, each being 1-bed accommodation, appear as 2-storey hip roof buildings to reflect the forms of the houses on the opposite side of Harvey Lane. Given the position to Bolton Road, the flats are dual aspect, so that one flat has its front door on that elevation with windows facing Bolton Road. This allows the building to turn the corner, which is more preferable than a blank gable. Flats are provided with a communal front garden, low roadside wall to match others in the area, and a bin cycle store is also provided. The semi-detached houses are all 3-bedroom and face onto Bolton Road, are arranged with bedroom in the roof space so that the ridge height matches the flats. These have 2 parking spaces each to the front and private gardens to the rear. The form of these houses follow the building line of the flats and the plot under construction to the east of the site. It is considered that the scale and design and form of the development is appropriate to the character and appearance of the area, and these have been designed so there is no unacceptable impact on neighbour amenities. In terms of parking and access, the flats have been provided with 1 car parking space each. The houses have 2 parking spaces and there are 2 visitor spaces provided. The Highway Authority has no objections to the parking or access proposals. Conditions that they have requested are suggested being imposed. Given the scale of the development, there is no requirement for affordable housing to be provided, but there is a requirement to meet the council's policies in respect of formal recreation and green infrastructure provisions. As there is not space on site for these, then a commuted payment will need to be secured via Section 106. It is noted that the former use of the site requires a contamination survey to ensure that the ground conditions of the site are fit for residential development, and conditions are suggested in this respect. Finally, it's noted that the proposals result in the loss of an employment site, and policy E2 of the DMDPD requires that in settlement limits that the use will be retained unless it is not viable or there is significant environmental gain which outweighs the employment benefits. In this case, the site was marketed for rental for 6 months from October 2018 to April 2019. And although there was some interest, it was noted the condition of the buildings requires significant upgrading and investment, and the redevelopment of the site for housing will remove the noise and disturbance of the former vehicle repair garages within the surrounding residential area. On balance, it is considered the proposed redevelopment represents an acceptable form of development, and the recommendation is to grant delegated authority to the Director of Place to approve the application, subject to the satisfactory completion of a Section 106 agreement and subject to the conditions set out on page 86 of your agenda. Thank you, Chair.
Excuse me. Thank you, Officer Brooke. Members, do you have any questions in relation to the presentation for the officer?
Chair. Chair.
Councillor Riley?
Thank you. Yeah, it's, as you say, Matthew, there's a loss of a employment site here. And you say it was up for rent for 6 months. I'm aware of some other local authorities that hold a sitting position for a year or even longer, actually, 18 months. We're a couple that hold it for 2 years, because sometimes you have developers, people that own a property, commercial property, who advertise it, but they don't actually advertise it very well, so they can then redevelop it. So this 6 month period is just in terms of this particular property, commercial property. Is there any general rule within Broadland of a year or more?
12 months, I think, until COVID, 12 months was the sort of fairly standard. And the report at 5.7 does sort of set this out, that they did undertake this sort of marketing approach for 6 months, and then the site was then purchased by somebody who had been advised by the local authority that because it was in the settlement limit, that you had a reasonable chance of getting planning permission for it. So we took a punt, and therefore it was taken off the market. So yeah, I think you're right. 12. I would be normally expecting when we bring these to you before previously, we do normally look for a sort of 12-month marketing period. I think the other thing with this, and I mentioned it in the presentation, is the sort of physical condition of the buildings required significant investment, and some of the buildings that we've brought to you before have either been been marketed for 12 months and they're structurally sound and solid on a well-established industrial estate. This isn't in those circumstances. It's the commercial use amongst residential development, and the other factor is would it result in improvement to the environment by having the commercial use replaced, and I think that is a factor in this case.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if I can just add to that, I think we have to acknowledge that we would normally seek those 12 months, so it's technically contrary to policy, but there's other material considerations that we've taken into account to say why that's acceptable in this case, and those are, as Matt has just outlined, the state of the building, the fact that it's surrounded by residential properties, so actually having a commercial use there in that sort of situation is not like it would normally be if it was on an industrial estate where we'd be seeking to retain that employment. So I think all those factors taken into consideration is why we're giving weight to acknowledging that it isn't followed that normal process, but we're giving material considerations to those other benefits of bringing forward a residential scheme on the site.
Okay, and I thank you for qualifying this, because it is important to maintain the 12 months. And I think if the minute can reflect this period, if it's approved, so at this point, because there is, in terms of outweighing the 12-month situation, we've got a unique situation on this site, and I think if that could be qualified in the minute, that would be wonderful in terms of the current policy. And on that basis, I would move that we approve.
We still have to go to public. We have still
Sorry.
still have to go. You're jumping the gun, Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm suitably smacked for that one. Thank you very much.
We'll come back to you. Okay, thank you. We will now just move on to public speaking. And we have with us today Dr. Foreman from Thorpe St Andrew Parish Council. Officer Arthurson, could you please unmute Thomas for me? Okay, that's wonderful. Okay, thank you. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Foreman. Can I just advise you that you will have 5 minutes to address the committee. The 5 minutes, unfortunately, we don't have a clock for that at the moment, but hopefully it will be soon. And so the host will advise you when you have 1 minute remaining. Is that acceptable to you?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Dr. Foreman. If you could introduce yourself to the committee, and you will have 5 minutes from now.
Good morning, councillors. My name is Thomas Foreman. I'm the Town Clerk at Thorpe St Andrew Town Council. I'm here today to speak in opposition to the application. In principle, the Town Council is, however, supportive of the demolition of the garage site and redevelopment of the site to housing. The Town Council believe that the proposals for this site is overdevelopment. Specifically, the Town Council believe the quantity and intensity of buildings are excessive in terms of both amenity and character to the area. There was some discussion at our plans committee about the proposals, and it was felt that the style was out of keeping with those houses on both Bolton Road and on Harvey Lane, and was therefore contrary to GC4 of the Development Management DPD. Although there are no objections from the Highway Authority, the impact on the local area with additional car parking will be significant. We have heard from residents of neighbouring roads who already have issues related to inconsiderate car parking and vehicle turning, and the impact of these dwellings and apartments will increase this impact, which is contrary to policies TS3 and TS4 of the Development Management DPD. Although we're hopeful that this has been resolved, the Town Council would also specifically like to lend its support to the concerns of the neighbour at 32A Harvey Lane, with an emphasis on the shared hall and utility room. So in principle, although the Town Council is supportive, it is felt that this proposal as it stands is unsuitable for the site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And do we have any questions from the members to Tom Foreman? No. Okay, thank you very much for your time this morning. It's very much appreciated. Okay, members, we don't have any more public speakers this morning, so we will go into in relation to this application. And at the end of the discussion, we will have a proposer and a seconder, and then we will go to the vote. So if I could ask, is there anybody who would like to make any points during the discussion? Nobody? Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Ward?
Okay, thank you. Yes, I don't really see how we can say it's going to be an increase in traffic. We've heard that from a couple of people, but when it was a garage, there was traffic in and out of there all the time. It might possibly be an increase in traffic from what it is today, but it certainly wasn't from when it was an operating garage. In fact, it wasn't just a garage. There was the car repairs and there was a motorcycle place around the back as well. I think there were 3 businesses on that site. And Dr. Foreman said it was sort of out of keeping with other properties on Harvey Lane. Well, the block of flats, as described in the elevations, looks almost identical to the one that sits on the opposite side of the road, further down the hill. So it is in keeping with what's already there on Harvey Lane. So I don't see a problem at all with this development. I think it's a nice development and to be welcomed. So I would move the officer's recommendation.
I would second that.
On that basis,
second that.
Bearing in mind
Councillor Fulcher has seconded it. Okay, just bear with me just 2 seconds. Councillor Fulcher has seconded it. Councillor Riley.
Yes, sorry about my premature moment there, Chair. I don't know what the hell happened there. But yes, as you know, I tend to propose moving this, and I think Councillor Ward's made the relevant points as well, because I am aware of this particular garage. I've been down there before, and I can't really see that it's not in keeping, and I don't really see the traffic issues either. Bearing in mind, though, as I was saying before, if we could please make sure we've qualified this in the minutes in terms of the current 12-month policy, as Helen and Matthews explained, then yes, I've already said that I would support this, Chair. So on that basis, I do.
Okay, thank you very much. Members, any further comments before, if there's no further discussion, then we could move to the roll call for the vote. Okay, Leah, there's nobody who I've missed out. Okay, thank you. So it has been proposed by Councillor Ward and seconded by Councillor Fulcher that we should, as a committee, agree to delegate authority to the Director of Place to approve, subject to the conditions and the successful completion of Section 106 agreement with the heads of terms as stated in page 86 of your papers. Officer Matthews, if I could ask you to do the roll call, please.
Thank you, Chairman. If members could indicate if they are for or against. Councillor Adams.
For.
Councillor Beadle.
For.
Councillor Brennan.
For.
Councillor Folger.
For.
Councillor Karimi Guvenlou.
For.
Councillor Lawn.
For.
Councillor Leggett.
For.
Councillor Moncur.
For.
Councillor Prutton.
For.
Councillor Riley.
For
Councillor
only with, sorry, can I just qualify? For, however, with the qualification that we've talked about earlier on, if that could be done, then it's for, yes.
That has been confirmed that will happen.
Councillor Ward.
For.
Chairman, that's carried unanimously.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for your time, Foreman, and that concludes all of our applications for today. So we will move on to agenda item 6, and that's the appeals received and lodged. And if Nigel, Matthew, or
yes, yeah, thanks, Chair. Just happy just to pick up on the items on page 87. The first one, some of the members of the Planning Committee will be familiar with that case. It was one which came before Planning Committee in July last year. It was very much a development plan balance where officers acknowledged that the scheme was contrary to policy, but that the benefits that it delivered in terms of open space, green infrastructure, outweighed the harm in relation to the development plan. It was a debated application which members, I don't think it was unanimous, but members resolved to refuse the application. It did go to public inquiry. That inquiry was delayed because of COVID and eventually was reconvened and held through a remote session that lasted a full week with the inspector going to the site. And the inspector has again acknowledged all of the harms in terms of the conflict with the development plan, so acknowledging the concerns of the local authority, but in that planning balance has given significant weight to the over provision of formal and informal open space, how it ties in with the East Area Green Infrastructure Plan and other benefits. And the key, if members do read the decision notice, is paragraph 104 of the planning inspector's decision letter. So the appeal has been allowed. It's a hybrid application, so they've been granted full planning permission for the erection of, I think, 23 units, and then the remainder in outline form with a legal agreement that will deliver all of the affordable housing, which members will remember was at 33%, so in excess of the 28% required under the current SMAR. And other financial benefits to deliver and provide the open space and the green infrastructure. Clearly, I think locally this hasn't gone down well. I don't think it's an application that is going to set a precedent in terms of applying to other parishes. This is quite unique in terms of the circumstances and what it sought to deliver for a parish that has very much an under provision of formal recreation space and green infrastructure, etc. And a key argument for us, and one which we heavily defended over a day and a half, was the issue of the 5-year land supply. And the inspector has not gone into the issue of the 5-year land supply, instead approaching this purely on a development plan balance, that she considered the development plan to be up to date and therefore our 5-year land supply, and that the balance here rested with the benefits that the proposal would deliver. And so on that basis, the appeal was allowed back in November of this year. The other appeals are purely for reference. They are appeals which have been lodged against decisions of the council to refuse 3 planning applications under delegated powers, and we await their decisions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Beadle would just like to comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On the Brundle appeal, are there any cost implications to the council?
No.
Oh, that's good. At least that's something. Okay, anything else before we move on? Okay, that's wonderful. Well, thank you. That concludes our meeting for today, and we will